Hi, and welcome to this ninth course of HTML programming. Now today we're going to be taking a look at margin, padding, and absolute positioning object. So to start with the lesson, I'm going to start by adding a small class here in my text entitled button with a paragraph inside it. So now if I refresh, we see that my button it shows right here. Now to make it easier to see, we're going to be adding colors and a border. Now, as we saw in the lesson, we can put 4 digits for the border and colors. Now, what's going to do, we're always going to be starting by upper, right, bottom, and left. So we're always going to be turning clockwise when we put an attribute, when we put 4 attribute to one CSS property. Same thing with the color here, we have top, right, bottom, and left. I'm just going to remove here since I'm pasting from the actual lesson. So here we go. Now I just added my button right here in the text. Now to play with the difference between padding and margin. Padding is going to be the space we're going to have between the text here and the upper border. As for the margin, it's going to be the space we have between the text around my paragraph or around the div. So if we do a test and we add a padding here of, let's say, 5 pixel and refresh, see now we just added some space between the text and the border of the object. Now if we do the same thing, but instead of margin with padding with margin, and we refresh, we're going to end up with the same border, but this time it's going to be outside the border that we're going to be having our spacing. So now, let's continue with the absolute positioning of an object. Now, the absolute positioning of an object is going to allow us to remove the object from the regular flow of the document. As you see here, all my text came back to how it was, but my button is now flowing somewhere in the document. Now, to have a nice object, initially we'll need to give it 4 properties. First off, it's going to be the width, the height, the top value, and the left value. So now I'm just copying and pasting from the actual lesson. So I put a width of 200 pixel, a height of 30 pixel. The top and the left, this is the position for the top left corner here compared to the parent object. So in this case, I have no parent object defined. So it's going to be top 200 pixels from the top of my screen here, and 600 from the left side here. So my corner here is going to be 200 to 600. Now if I save and refresh, here we go. I have my button which is now at 600 from the left side and 2 from the top. Now, if we want to center a little bit more the button, there's 2 ways of doing it. We can add a margin to the paragraph inside the button or a padding. Now, if we add a padding in the button, let's say 5 pixel, it's actually going to modify the width of my of the object. So here I have an object of 200. If I add a 5 pixel on each side, the final result is going to be 210. So if I refresh, see the width actually went larger. I can achieve the same thing without changing the aspect of the button if I just move the paragraph, the margin in the paragraph, as this is not going to be affecting the size of the object itself. So if I put a margin of 5 pixel, save and refresh, see, I still have a side here of 5 pixel around the text itself, but my button is actually 200, a width of 200, and I still keep a height of 30 pixel. Now, as we saw earlier on, we can use an object property to add some effect to the text. So we can use the hover property. So let's say if I take my button here, and I add the hover property. Now this is just some extra that we don't really have in the lesson, but it's always nice to add. If we want a button effect, we can just reverse the border here and the color, and that's going to give us an effect of an actual button being hover on. So see, if I just take my color here and I'm going to switch the gray from one side to the other, and same thing with the size of the border. Now if we save and refresh, when we hover, now we're starting to have that button fill effect. As we can see, when our mouse is just going to go on top of it, we're changing the border width. So on the right side and the bottom, that we have 2 pixels, is going to fall to 1 pixel, and the opposite is going to arrive to the top. Same thing for the color. We're going to have a lighter version on the right and bottom when we hover on it, and a darker version on the top and left side. So that's all for the margin and absolute positioning and padding in CSS. Stay tuned for next lesson, and we're going to see in detail more property of the CSS document.